Cipollone.
Speaker, I want to start by congratulating the Leader and the Deputy Leader of the Labor Party for a fabulous job that they've done since the end of last year. Doesn't my team agree that they have done a great job? And Mr Speaker, I want to say to the other side, prepare for that day after Election Day in 2017, because we know what the headline will be. The day after election in 2017, it will be "A little goes a long way," because I guarantee you that day after the election you will be staring down the barrel of a Labor government, so please be prepared. We're excited, you should be too, because I'm sure the rest of New Zealand is as well. We have heard from so many, sorry, I'm not saying you'll be excited, Mr Speaker.
Well, I may well be, but you're not allowed to bring me into debate.
Sure.
Thank you.
From so many members of the other side of the House, we have heard about the economic management credentials of the national government. And I just want to say that actually it is not the economic management that the national government are good at. It is the creation of the perception that they are great economic managers, that they are good at. And Mr Speaker, there was an interesting question put to the government earlier today, and it brought up the fact that the Prime Minister dropped the ball 6 times when getting filmed for a Cricket World Cup promo. Dropping the ball 6 times. That's quite a good image, Mr Speaker, because I was thinking about the fact that that government have dropped the ball more than 6 times with regards to their economic management and financial management of this country. And let me just give you 6 examples of where the national government have failed New Zealand in terms of their economic management and financial decision-making. Let's just start with a fairly recent one, and that would be the Sky City Convention Centre. Now, what did the government tell us? They told us and they told New Zealand that this wouldn't cost us a cent. And what are we looking at now? $130 million on the taxpayer. Now, that's not the promise. That's not the assurance that the national government gave to the country when the deal was done and signed. But here we are, the financial gurus over there, costing the taxpayers $130 million that wasn't budgeted for. Number 2, in terms of an example of the great financial management of the national government, we were told when National first got into office that they would close the wage gap with Australia. And what was the wage gap at that time? $121.76. Now, did they manage to close that wage gap with Australia? Well, actually, no. The wage gap is now $170.28. Is that a good example of good economic management by the national government? They've dropped the ball twice. 2 examples of where they've dropped the ball. Another good example is a case that all New Zealanders are very aware of, and that's NovaPay. How much did NovaPay cost us? Well, it cost us $110 million just to set up and run, and then it cost us an additional $45 million to fix. And then on top of that, Stephen Joyce made the decision not only to maintain the flawed system, but then to buy the flawed system on behalf of the taxpayer. I'm sure New Zealanders are looking at the national government and thinking, great economic managers. That's the 3rd example of dropping the ball. The 4th example I would like to share with the House goes to exports, and we heard some of the members on that side of the House talking about how great the national government have done in terms of exports. Now let's look at the facts. Now they said they would increase exports from 30 to 40% of GDP, but instead now it is down under 30% and still going down. 4 examples of where the national government, like their Prime Minister, with their Prime Minister, has dropped the ball. Number 5, a great example of the financial management of the gurus on the other side of the House, is how the national government flogged off our state assets and didn't get the money they expected, including the sale of Meridian, which they sold for $1 per share to 2% of New Zealanders, and now those shares are trading for $2 per share. Is that a good example of great economic management?
Drop the ball.
That's the 5th example of dropping the ball. And the number 6 one I'd like to share is the surplus that that government was anticipating making, but now what we have is Treasury forecasting that National will be $572 short of the surplus that they told New Zealanders they would reach. So, unfortunately for New Zealand, it is not that National are great economic managers and good with our economy. It is the fact that they have been so good at pulling the wool over New Zealand's eyes and creating the perception that they are good economic managers. Because the 6 examples that I've just shared with you, where National has dropped the ball, paint a pretty clear picture that they are irresponsible with the taxpayers' money, and actually they are completely incompetent when it comes to financial management of any sort. So I think over the next 2.5 years, New Zealand is going to become more aware of these examples where National has dropped the ball. There are going to be more cases, because National cannot help themselves, with respect to where they will drop the ball. And actually, increasingly, what we're seeing when we go out and about and we meet with the public is that people are becoming increasingly concerned. So National, please don't get too comfortable in those seats and maintain that level of arrogance that we're seeing too often as we're out and about and even here in the House, because actually what we do know is that politics goes in cycles and that New Zealanders are becoming increasingly aware of your shortfalls. Excuse me, Mr. Speaker, not your shortfalls, but the National Government shortfalls. I want to refer to another thing that I'm really concerned about, and that is the banter that we've had from the other side of the House towards our leader about his desire to focus on the future of work in New Zealand. Now, one thing that has been apparent for many years is that Labor actually does look to the future. Labor actually does plan for the future. Labor actually looks down the track and thinks, what do we need to do to prepare our country for the future? And Mr. Speaker, there are some very clear examples where National has dropped the ball with regards to preparation, and I just want to point out a couple of those. One of those, because we've heard so much about the rebuild in Christchurch, is actually when they first got into office in 2008. One of the first decisions they made was to cut funding from trades training. And now here we have them constantly talking about the fact that we have a shortfall of skilled tradespeople to be able to undertake the work. Now, National, so quick to forget that actually one of the first places you made cuts was to trades training. The second point I'd like to make with regards to where National didn't look to the future and made irresponsible decisions was with regards to some of the decisions they made in our schools. Now, today I looked in the newspaper and I saw one of the ministers reporting on the fact that National want to put a focus on the obesity problem that we have in this country. Now, can I just remind National that yes, that's a very important issue to focus on and a place to put some resource. But actually, when National first got into office, what did they do? They actually cut out, I don't know why, but they actually cut out the healthy food in schools policy. So I actually think that National needs to spend some time reflecting on the irresponsible decisions that have been made, and I guarantee that New Zealanders are looking at some of the decisions that have been made, looking at some of the statements that have been made now and finding it really difficult to reconcile what actions you've undertaken in the past with the statements that you're making at present. And if I go back to the future of work stuff, I totally get behind, like everyone else here, our leader, with the need to focus on the future of work. We have so many issues in terms of unemployment. 5.4% was the last quarter, and now we're at 5.7%. Unemployment is not going down under this government. This government is irresponsible in terms of our economic management, and New Zealanders are suffering because of it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Good speech.